Chapter 71. Corny bared his fangs and growled a warning at Michael, who approached the injured Marines he protected. To his right, Kelly, Dana, and Adam rolled around on the snow with Billy Ramsey, locked in an embrace of flashing claws and gnashing teeth. Their blood stained the snow red. 6 uninjured Marines, the colonel, the sergeant, and Darcy, kept Derek Avery busy in a hail of gunfire and hand grenades. Nathan Davis, the Omega Wolf yet to be engaged, played cat and mouse with Edison and Mitchell. Although not nearly as fast as Thomas, Nathan was wiry. His implants functioned better, too. He slipped in and out of the trees, dodging every attempt to touch him. Edison snagged him by his large, deformed foot. It was long, curved like a wolf's, with pads on the ball and beneath the toes. A flick of his ankle sent Edison flying. He careened into Dana. Their heads connected with a loud crack. They fell to the ground, knocked off line. Mitchell looked back at them, his mouth hanging open. He turned to Nathan, crouched low, his claws in front of him, ready to strike. "It's just you and me, ugly," Mitchell growled. "Come on!" Nathan dove at him. They fell toward the troops, slashing and howling. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan jumped out of the way toward Corny, aiming his pistol at Michael. "Who's in the chopper?" he hollered, as it circled overhead. "Wolfboy God says they're friendlies," Corny shouted back, "but it can't, or won't, say who." "What's that supposed to mean?" Michael lunged at Ryan and grabbed him by the neck. "No!" Corny cried, leaping at the Omega Wolf. Michael grabbed his arm and smashed him into Darcy. Corny's weight fell on her thigh and snapped it. Her scream distracted them for a split second. It was all the time the Omega Wolves needed. Nathan drew back and slashed down the front of Mitchell's breather unit. Mitchell's hands went up to his chest. He fainted at the sight of his blood. Billy grabbed Adam and Kelly and knocked their heads together. The force of the blow caused their onboard computers to go offline, and they reverted to human form. Billy crushed them into the snow. He bounded toward Michael, who held Lieutenant Colonel Ryan in the air. Derek plowed through the Marines when their attention turned to their leader. Only the sergeant managed to move out of the way in time to avoid his claws. He fell to the side and sighted his weapon on Derek's kneecap. He opened fire, emptying the entire clip into his leg. His kneecap didn't shatter, as the sergeant planned, but the bullets tore apart the tendons and flesh holding it together. Derek cried out and fell to the ground, exposed circuitry sputtering, his leg twisted around backward. Michael gripped the colonel, intending to squeeze his head off. Someone screamed, "No!" so loud it was heard over the helicopter. Everyone looked toward the sound. Oliver leaped out of the helicopter from 200 meters up, his lupine form perfectly visible against the clearing sky. His claws glinted in the sunlight as he fell straight for Michael. He landed in the snow in his hands, flipped over onto his feet, and slashed backward with his claws. He gouged the Omega Wolf's arm, knocking Lieutenant Colonel Ryan free. The colonel tumbled to the snow beneath them, gasping for breath. Michael screamed as Oliver lunged, ripping into his face, tearing the silver disc out of the center of his forehead. He whipped it away to the side. He slashed Michael with such speed, his hand paws were a blur. Adam, back online and transformed, leaped up and caught the disc in his teeth. He bit down on it, the circuits exploding with a bright flash. Oliver howled in victory as Michael fell to his knees. He crouched down, grabbed the Omega Wolf by the neck, and squeezed. "The discs," Michael coughed, blood seeping from dozens of deep wounds on his chest and neck. Michael choked, shuddered, and went limp in Oliver's hands. Oliver dropped him in the snow, regret in his eyes. He steeled himself. He didn't have time to be gentle. If he hadn't acted, the colonel would be dead. He spun around toward Nathan and lunged. He caught the wolf boy at the knees and knocked him to the ground. Adam jumped onto Nathan's chest. He jammed his claws into his forehead while Oliver held onto him. He ripped the silver disc free and tossed it to Corny. Corny transformed to semi-wolf mode, caught it, held it in his palm, and smashed it with his fist. It fell in pieces onto the snow. Nathan's human eye fluttered and rolled back into his head. A power surge exploded it outward in a shower of sparks. He convulsed as Oliver and Adam dove away. Nathan stiffened, screamed, and fell over face first. Corny bioscanned him. There were no life signs. He's dead, he frowned, resuming full wolf mode. Adam turned to Oliver and said, "It took you long enough." Oliver put his hand paw on Adam's shoulder. "Never again, Adam," he said. "We'll never be separated again. I swear it." "You know something?" Adam replied. "I believe you." The sergeant grabbed a portable anti-tank missile from one of the injured troops and fired it at Derek's disc implant. The explosion knocked the disc free, taking most of the Omega Wolf's head with it. He shook as he fell to one knee, his brain visible through the hole in his skull. Darcy, her leg burning, leveled her pistol from where she lay on the ground and fired. The bullet knocked Derek off his feet. He landed flat on his back on the snow, twitching. "You're dead," Darcy gasped, grimacing in pain. Corny and Kelly knocked Billy down and held him while Edison ripped the disc implant free. The moment he destroyed it, Billy stopped thrashing. Unlike the others, he didn't demonstrate an adverse reaction to the disc's removal. He looked up at Edison, his eyes filling with tears. "Thanks, Edison," he choked. Edison backed up. Corny and Kelly released him. Billy started to stand. Adam raced across the snow and rammed into him, knocking him down. He put his claws against Billy's neck, growling. "What's wrong with you guys?" Adam cried. He pressed harder against Billy's neck. "They tried to kill us. They killed Daniel." Billy's face clouded. He looked into Adam's glowing yellow eyes. "No more tears to cry for us, Adam?" he asked. Adam jerked back, as if physically struck. Billy nodded and said, "That's right. We heard you too." He looked at the Wolf Boys. "All of you. We know you. We've listened to you. Sometimes it made the loneliness almost bearable." "Oh my God," Oliver whispered, changing back to his human form. "What did they do to you?" He caught Adam in his arms as he backed away from Billy, horror blanketing his face. He held his pack brother. Adam let him. He needed holding. "Does it matter?" Billy asked, wrapping his arms around his legs. He rocked back and forth, his hands jittery, his neck twitching. "Go," he whispered, a tear sliding down his cheek. "You have wounded." "What about you?" Adam choked, holding Oliver's arms as he returned to human form. He looked at the torn flesh and Billy's forehead. Blood ran down his face, mixing with his tears. "I'll be all right," he nodded, staring at the snow. "We don't have your nano repair system, but our advanced immune system can handle the damage." He struggled. "Except for Thomas. He's dead. Derek, Michael, and Nathan will recover. They're already breathing again." He let his head fall onto his forearms. "Can you leave me alone now? They controlled us through the discs. I'm no threat to you. I want a minute by myself." "Sure," Oliver said, turning Adam away. "Whatever you need." "Thanks," Billy choked. A second later, he was weeping. Oliver walked with Adam toward the wounded, his arm across Adam's shoulders. Corny met them halfway, and they embraced. They said nothing in the midst of the carnage. Their embrace was enough for now. Edison and Dana crouched over Mitchell. They watched as his nanites healed his wounds. He had yet to open his eyes, but Wolf Boy God informed them he would be all right. Oliver let Adam and Corny go and went to Kelly, touching him on the shoulder. Kelly knelt next to a dead Marine. He patted Oliver's hand with his hand paw and hoarsely whispered, "I'm okay." "Don't lie to me, Kelly," Oliver said, squatting next to him. "We don't lie." Kelly's face contorted, and he started to cry. His red fur disappeared as he changed back to human form. He held Oliver's hand to his face, the horror of it all sinking in. His emotions flowed freely and reflected through the Wolf Boy God link. For an instant, they were all of one mind, one sorrow. It spread, and they drowned, but inside they found each other's strength. It was as tangible as their love for one another. They grabbed for that feeling and clung to it. They were one. They were together, and nothing would ever separate them again. Lieutenant Henderson, Cody, and Jake rushed out of the woods. Jake's pistol was at the ready. He spun around, looking for someone to shoot, but then dropped the weapon to his front when he couldn't find a target. Lieutenant Henderson jogged over to where Mitchell lay. Jake looked at Oliver, confusion on his face. "It's over?" he asked, sounding disappointed. "Well," Oliver shrugged, "if you got here sooner." "Oh, right!" Jake exclaimed. "Like we could find anywhere to land." "Nothing stopped you from coming down the same way Oliver did, Agent Danziger," Adam said. Jake shook his finger at him. "You know something, Adam?" he asked. "You never struck me as the one-liner type." Adam walked over to Jake and poked him in the chest, one for each word. "Things? Poke. Change. Poke." He grabbed Jake by the wrist. "Let's go. We have wounded." Adam tugged him toward the injured men. Jake looked at Oliver and shrugged. Oliver shook his head. "You heard him," he said to the others. "We have wounded." They spread out and tended to the injured while Oliver scanned their bodies. His heart cracked with each dead Marine he encountered. Only 6 of them were still alive, and only the sergeant and the colonel didn't need immediate medical attention. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan put a splint on Darcy's broken leg, but she needed to get to a hospital. He said as much. "Worry about them first," she groaned, each movement agony. "We can evacuate them with the chopper." Lieutenant Colonel Ryan looked at Henderson, who nodded. "The chopper's a half a kilometer south." "Let's move," Lieutenant Colonel Ryan said, rubbing his neck. "No one else dies today." "Amen to that," the sergeant said. He asked, "What about Granger?" "What about him?" the colonel replied, crossing his arms. "Where's he going to go?" "When we get down to Denver, we'll gather some troops and come back. Without the Omega Wolves, Granger's—" "Oh, no!" Darcy cried. Everyone looked at her. "The Omega Wolves!" she exclaimed. "They're gone!" Their heads snapped around, scanning the clearing for any sign of Billy, Michael, Derek, or Nathan. Adam and Oliver transformed simultaneously and sniffed the air. They looked at each other, nodded, and turned to the others. "They're moving toward the complex," Oliver growled. "Jesus Christ!" the colonel cried. "We can't let them get there. This could start all over again." "No, I don't think that's it, sir," Oliver replied, scooping up one of the damaged control discs. He examined it closely. "I think the Omega Wolves have something else in mind." "Sir," the sergeant interrupted, grabbing the colonel by the arm. "We can't leave the men like this. They need to get to a hospital." "You don't have to," Jake interrupted, moving in next to Oliver. He shoved his pistol into his holster and picked up a rifle off the snow. We can handle this. He looked at the Wolf Boys and nodded. The Wolf Boys howled their response. "Wait!" the colonel yelled, pointing at Mitchell. "What about him? You have a man down." "Wolf Boy God says he'll be fine," Oliver interjected. "He just needs a rest." Darcy cleared her throat. "Bring him over here," she said, motioning with her hand. She reloaded her pistol. "I'll look after him." "Oh?" the colonel asked. "And who's going to look after you, young lady?" Dana leaped in front of her, hunched down on all fours. He growled, "I am." The colonel sighed. "All right," he muttered, badly wanting a cigar. "Remember what I said. Unless it's unavoidable, I want Granger taken alive." "What about me?" Cody asked, crossing his arms indignantly. He felt somewhat ignored. The colonel grabbed him by the arm. "You're going to help carry my men, princess."